By the end of this video, I'm going to teach you how to become dangerously influential. And no, this isn't about manipulation or fancy persuasion tactics. This is what I've learned firsthand going from 2018. I was a high school dropout, no education, and I had chronic social anxiety working as a window cleaner. And by 2022, just 4 years later, I had worked my way up to president, CEO, and even partner of the most prominent sales recruiting and consulting company, Closers.io. Now, this is the company that had worked hands-on with the sales teams for people like Tony Robbins, Kern, Dean Graziosi, Agora Financial, and the list goes on. And I even got to share the stage with some of my heroes like Tom Bilyeu and Patrick Bet-David. And so this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I want to share with you what I learned along the way and the exact frameworks that worked for me. So first, why influence? Here's the thing. If you're responsible for anyone, this could be your family, your team, your children, you have a moral duty to lead them and lead them well. And what is leadership, right? It's influence, nothing more, nothing less, as John Maxwell says. But here's what most people get wrong about influence. They think it's about having like the best argument, right? Or the most compelling data, for example, or being the smartest person in the room. This is wrong, dead wrong. So by the way, if you want to become someone people actually listen to, respect, and follow, hit the subscribe button. That helped me out. And I'm also going to be sharing more information on topics like these on this channel. So why is influence so difficult in the first place, right? Why are we even making a video about this, right? Here's the truth. People don't necessarily resist your ideas, all right? But they resist being changed by your ideas. Okay, this is called psychological reactance, right? So it's a fancy term for when people feel like you're trying to change their mind. Our subconscious mind as human beings activates defense mechanisms, right? Think about it. Someone comes to you and they say, here's what you should do, right? What's your first instinct? Whether it's conscious or subconscious, we find reasons why they might be wrong, or reasons why they're definitely wrong. And this is why most people fail at influence. They operate at what I call level one, all right, the surface level. And this looks like, here's what you should do, or the data shows, which might be a little bit better because you're providing evidence, but it's by no means the best. Or I think you should do X. Okay, this creates instant resistance. And so, but what if I told you there are actually 5 levels of human motivation, and most people only know about the first one? All right. So the most influential people, if you think about it, like Jesus, for example, or Martin Luther King Jr., or Lincoln, or just any modern leader or CEO that gets people to follow them, they do something that 99% of the people miss. That they create conditions where people influence themselves. And so I want to get into these 3 levels of influence, and then I'll cover the 5 levels of motivation. Okay. So let me break this down for you. Real influence has 3 levels. At least this is the way I see it. Level 1, this is surface level. This is where most people live. This is here's what you should do. Level 2 is emotional level. Here's like, how do you feel about this? Or what's your experience been? And then level 3 is self-discovery. This is where you might ask, what patterns do you notice? Or what would happen if? And so level 1 creates resistance. And level 2, it might work temporarily, but level 3, this is where you create lasting change. And now here's why, is people don't argue with their own conclusions, right? When someone discovers something for themselves, they like own that discovery, right? When they envision the better future for themselves, it becomes their vision. But even level 3 can fail if you're speaking to the wrong level of human motivation, which is why I want to share with you the 5 levels of human motivation. So after years in sales and in leadership, I don't even know, countless thousands, hundreds of thousands of conversations. And I've identified exactly what motivates us as human beings. Understanding these 5 levels changes everything about how you connect with people. So level 1 is desires, right? This is surface level. This might be more money, right? More freedom, avoiding pain or discomfort, gaining pleasure. It's transactional and it works temporarily, but the moment the carrot disappears, so does your influence. Now, level 2, this is legacy. This is the future self, right? How someone might want to be remembered, or how they want people to remember them, or what they want them to say at their funeral. This connects to the ego and the need for significance, which is fundamental human drivers. And then level 3, this is like purpose or calling. This is their sense of why. Viktor Frankl, in his book, A Man's Search for Meaning, talks about humans can endure almost anything if they have a strong enough why. And now level 4 is identity. This is the core self. This is who we believe we are at our essence. And most decisions flow from that place, right? Whether conscious or subconscious, we're kind of always asking ourselves deep down, like, you know, what would someone like me do in this situation? And so here's the highest level. Level 5, this is the transcendent truth. In other words, the worthy cause. This is connecting people to something infinitely greater than themselves, right? Those historical figures I mentioned, like Jesus. I mean, think about Jesus, right? Regardless of your religious stance, right? He was so influential. He started a movement that's still going over 2,000 years later. And I mean, we literally changed how we measure time. It got split in half and how we measure time historically, right? And it's because he connected with people and he connected who people could be to a worthy cause, right? This was so powerful that even his 12 disciples, the 12 apostles, became willing martyrs for that cause. I think only one apostle, John, we don't really know how he died, but we do know that his life was on the line his entire life and it didn't slow him down. Now, I primarily want you to pay attention to the last three that I mentioned, okay? Because here's something crucial. Sometimes identity and purpose, they swap positions, right? And you need to know how to navigate this. For mentally and emotionally healthy people, purpose shapes identity. And I think personally as it should, right? But most people aren't there yet, right? They're trapped in that I'm just not that kind of person. Okay, when healthy people, again, they think purpose first and then they're willing to change for what's right, right? So you need to diagnose what drives them first. And so now I want to cover this framework to kind of help you to temp check where people are at and be able to communicate with them in the right way. So here's like a practical way to think about it. Is step one, diagnose what drives someone and listen to their language. All you have to do is listen, right? Don't say anything, just listen for what they say. Like desires, they might talk about outcomes or rewards or recognition or results. Legacy, it's like impact, reputation, what will people think? Purpose, do they say things like calling, meaning, mission? I know for me, I'm a purpose-driven person, and so I'm always kind of thinking about it. You can ask like my wife and my friends, if you were to ask them, they'd say, yeah, he's like kind of always thinking about like calling or purpose or mission, right? And then identity is like, well, that's just not who I am, or that's not the kind of person, or I'm not the kind of person that X, right? Or that's not me. And then transcendent is universal principles, right? Serving something greater than themselves. This is when they think about, again, what's right or right, what's true, people that really hold those values close to them. And so what you're going to do is just listen to the language and figure out where they are, right? And then you'll move on to step 2 is find the gap and help them discover limitations at their current level, right? Stay curious. If especially if might be like a hard conversation or uncomfortable conversation, like turn any frustration into curiosity. Right? It's a really good rule of thumb. Any frustration, turn it into curiosity, lean in, and continue to ask questions. So for identity-driven people, for example, you might ask, who do you want to be? Right? Or, what's the most altruistic, like healthiest version of yourself? And then listen, and then, well, how would they handle this? Right? And you're going to begin to help them to self-discover, right? For purpose-driven people, it's like, hey, what do you feel like your purpose is? And then just ask, well, how would this align with your purpose? Or what would the decision be that's in most alignment with your purpose? Ask questions like that. And then step 3 is you want to bridge up and lead them to a higher level of motivation. So for example, from desire to legacy, it's like, well, what if you prioritized how you want to be remembered instead? Or from purpose to identity is, who do you need to become to fulfill this purpose, right? And then step 4 is you're going to start to co-create the path. Again, don't just give them the answer, but you're going to co-create, you're going to collaborate on the path forward, help them discover it, right? They won't feel, if you do this right, they won't feel like you have thrust change upon them, right? Instead, you helped them to gain clarity, and that clarity they created for themselves, right? And they own that. They own that vision. They own that clarity and that idea. So actually, years ago, one of my old mentors asked me the question, Mitchell, like, would you rather be right or would you rather be rich? And at the time, I was very motivated. So that really hit home for me, right? He knew where I was psychologically. And so now I'm not as motivated by money, but regardless, that question still sticks with me because it helps me to evaluate how much value I'm attaching to being right. And I think that's true for all of us. So that question, nonetheless, made me realize how little value being right actually has in the grand scheme of things. And so it's not about you getting credit for them getting the clarity or you getting credit. You don't need to be right. It's about serving them and doing what's best for them. And so as you're helping someone to self-discover, you're creating the conditions for them to do so. just remember it's okay. Like you've done it right when they thank you for helping them, but they're not thanking you for telling them what to do. Now, I called this dangerously influential for a reason, and this is powerful stuff. And the same frameworks that help someone to discover a better path can be used to manipulate. And the difference is intention, right? So use these not to serve yourself, but to serve others. And again, you'll know you've mastered this when people start to thank you, right, for these conversations where they did most of the talking, right? When they say, wow, that like really helped me, thank you for helping me think through this, or that really encouraged me, right? Instead of just, hey, thanks for the advice. And that is when you become dangerously influential. So if this helps you, click the like button and subscribe for more content like this. And let me know in the comments, which level of motivation do you think drives you most?